What you're about to hear isn't just another political exchange. It's a reality check on what happens when an administration treats legal limits as optional and accountability as an inconvenience. Let's break down why her message matters, what it reveals, and what it means for our democracy moving forward. Don't forget to subscribe for more hearings.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome Attorney General Bondi. Tens of thousands of public servants at the Department of Justice and its bureaus have historically worked very hard and continue to work hard to protect public safety and uphold the rule of law in our country. Yet, I must take this opportunity to express my very strong concerns about this current administration's lack of respect for the rule of law. We have seen numerous examples of this administration outright breaking the law. The administration continues to illegally withhold billions of dollars in funding that Congress appropriated, including hundreds of recently terminated justice grants that had previously been awarded through open and competitive processes. The administration is violating the federal law that mandates that the Office of Management and Budget publish apportionments and show the public how and when federal agencies are spending appropriated funds. The Justice Department has begun illegally restoring the gun possession rights of convicted felons and domestic abusers. It's allowing the sale of forced reset trigger devices without a background check. These are devices that effectively convert regular firearms into machine guns, which I fear will only make mass shootings in the United States more numerous and deadly. More than 1,500 individuals involved in the January 6th attack on the Capitol were pardoned or granted commutations of sentences. The president's new appointee as pardon attorney, Ed Martin, previously raised money to help defend some of the most violent of these individuals, people who assaulted police officers. Some of the pardoned January 6 defendants have subsequently been arrested, charged, or sentenced for other crimes. Under this president, the U.S. has accepted a luxury jetliner from Qatar, very likely in violation of the Emoluments Clause of the Constitution. This president has also issued a series of illegal and unconstitutional executive orders, several of which are being challenged in courts right now. Presidential actions in recent months have also directed highly political and targeted investigations against law firms and individuals, including Miles Taylor, a former staffer for the House Appropriation Committee's Republican majority. Meanwhile, the administration has weakened law enforcement against political corruption by gutting the department's public integrity section, which fairly investigates and prosecutes corruption by government officials. It has dismantled Task Force Klepto-Capture, which was started after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, to enforce sanctions and target oligarchs close to the Kremlin. It has also ended the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force, which was created to defend against foreign influence operations targeting U.S. institutions. Furthermore, dozens of experienced career federal prosecutors, litigators, and FBI leaders have been fired or forced out since the start of this administration, including James Dennehy, the highly respected leader of the FBI's New York field office. I'm really concerned about what is happening in the Department of Justice, especially based on the department's fiscal year 2026 budget request. The proposed budget weakens the country's efforts to fight crime and keep Americans safe. The proposal reduces funding for the FBI, despite the heroism of agents like those in Minnesota who aided in the recent capture of the deranged man accused of killing a state representative and nearly killing another. It slashes funding to fight the trafficking of fentanyl and other dangerous illegal drugs by reducing the budget of the DEA, cutting the high-intensity drug trafficking areas program by more than a third, and by completely eliminating the dedicated funding for the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force's program. The administration also proposes a cut of more than 25% to the ATF, which will further weaken the government's ability to fight illegal gun trafficking. This budget proposal also puts further pressure on state and local budgets at a time of great economic uncertainty. The proposal cuts by more than $800 million funding to grants to local and state law enforcement for fighting and reducing crime, including a cut of more than $37 million to burn justice assistance formula grants that help our local law enforcement in every single state. I'm also concerned about the huge cuts to grants aimed at preventing and prosecuting violence against women, such as STOP grants and sexual assault services grants. The administration also proposes eliminating 3 valuable programs aimed at fighting and preventing hate crimes at the same time that the FBI is reporting that hate crimes are at historic highs. The administration's budget would completely eliminate the Community Relations Service, which was created by the Civil Rights Act of 1964 to prevent and resolve conflicts in American communities. These actions and this budget proposal simply don't demonstrate a commitment to the rule of law and equal rights for all Americans. I look forward to discussing these important issues at today's hearing. Thank you for being here, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
What you just heard from Congresswoman Grace Meng wasn't simply a critique. It was a warning, a sober, fact-driven indictment of an administration that has treated the rule of law not as a foundation of American democracy, but as an inconvenience to be overridden whenever it clashes with political ambition. And as she walked through example after example, you could feel the weight of it. Not partisan rhetoric, but institutional reality. She began by grounding her point in something that's often forgotten, the tens of thousands of career professionals inside the Department of Justice. These are people who don't answer to political pressure, who don't campaign, who don't switch sides when a new president is elected. They are the backbone of American law enforcement. And when someone like Grace Meng, who works closely with the appropriations process, who sees the budgets, the oversight reports, the memos, says she is alarmed, that carries a different kind of authority. She's not reacting to headlines. She's responding to patterns that show up in the machinery of government long before the public notices. And the pattern she outlined is stark. This administration has been withholding funds that Congress legally appropriated. That isn't a dispute. That isn't a misunderstanding. Congress controls the purse. It's one of the clearest constitutional powers. When the executive branch refuses to spend money that Congress has already authorized and allocated, that is a direct violation of federal law. We've seen this dynamic before in American history, and courts have consistently ruled that presidents cannot simply ignore appropriations because they disagree with them. Meng is pointing out that we've crossed that line again, deliberately. Then she moved to something even more alarming, the Justice Department restoring gun rights to convicted felons and domestic abusers. Think about that. At a time when gun violence is the leading cause of death for American children, when survivors of domestic abuse are at the highest risk of being killed by an intimate partner once firearms are involved, the administration is actively loosening restrictions on the most dangerous individuals. This isn't about protecting Second Amendment rights. It's about dismantling the common-sense safeguards that have been upheld for decades by Republican and Democratic administrations alike. And when she mentions forced reset triggers, devices that effectively convert ordinary firearms into near fully automatic weapons, she is highlighting a loophole that could directly fuel mass shootings. Law enforcement officials across the country have been warning about these devices, and instead of tightening oversight, the administration has effectively given them a green light. That is policy by choice, not by accident. Then comes January 6th. More than 1,500 people involved in the attack on the Capitol have been pardoned or had their sentences commuted. But Meng wasn't just listing numbers. She was drawing attention to a deeper, systemic shift. Pardon power is one of the most powerful constitutional tools a president holds, but it was never intended to be used as a shield for political allies or violent offenders who targeted democracy itself. And what's even more troubling is that some of these individuals, once freed, have gone on to commit new crimes. That is a predictable outcome when clemency becomes a political reward instead of a carefully reviewed act of justice. Her point about Ed Martin, the newly appointed pardon attorney who raised money to defend violent January 6 attackers, reinforces that this isn't random, it's intentional. You don't appoint someone like that unless you want to send a message about whose interests the justice system now prioritizes. She then turned to something that doesn't always make the headlines but has enormous implications: the United States accepting a luxury jetliner from Qatar. This potentially violates the Emoluments Clause, which was written into the Constitution specifically to prevent foreign governments from influencing American leaders through gifts or favors. That clause exists to protect national security. The framers saw foreign influence as one of the biggest threats to a young democracy. So when a sitting president receives something as extravagant as a jetliner, alarm bells should go off, not because of partisanship, but because the Constitution demands it. And when Meng mentions illegal executive orders and politically targeted investigations, she's pointing to another dangerous trend, weaponizing the Justice Department to investigate critics, journalists, former officials, even staffers who worked on government committees. That is not how the justice system is supposed to function. Investigations should be based on evidence, not vendettas. When presidents blur that line, democracies around the world weaken. And when the United States does it, it sets a precedent that can be used by every future administration. Then she shifted to something that affects the country at a deeper structural level: the dismantling of the public integrity section that prosecutes political corruption, the elimination of kleptocapture, the ending of the FBI's Foreign Influence Task Force. These are not obscure offices. They exist to defend America from corruption, Russian oligarchs, and foreign interference. Dismantling them doesn't just weaken law enforcement, it removes the guardrails that shield our democracy from the most powerful criminals in the world. And she didn't stop there. Dozens of experienced federal prosecutors, career FBI leaders, and top investigators have been pushed out. These are people with decades of expertise, institutional memory, and independence. When you purge those voices, when you replace them with political loyalists or inexperienced appointees, you weaken the entire justice system. You make it easier to manipulate,